This
Awesome.
is good, excellent evening, magnificent morning, and awesome afternoon. This is Carla from Rehan Allahwala's World of Connections, and I am here to speak with Keely Stawicki. She'll have a little trouble with her name, but she is a digital marketer and she is absolutely awesome. I've learned a lot from her in a very short time. And we're going to learn about her work and her passions and why she does it. I don't think it's all about money. I think it's also all about helping people be successful. Having said that, I am happy to remind you that this show is sponsored by Rehan Allahwala's Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. Keely, please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Keely and I'm from the state of Oregon. I've actually been spending the last 2 years traveling around the country of Mexico, working from my laptop on the beach. I started a digital marketing agency after essentially losing my first business during COVID and decided to reinvent myself and do something new. I love dancing, specifically salsa, bachata, and tango. And I have a small mini pincher dog that I adopted while I was in Mexico. And I love all things adventure. I love living life to the fullest.
Excellent. And you said digital marketing. Can you tell me what that means?
Yeah. So in the old days, or not so old days, typically businesses relied on print marketing, television marketing, or radio advertising. And all of those things are fairly, by today's standards, fairly ineffective and quite costly. There's a lot of the market and the way people consume information is switching off of, say, physical items and more into the digital world. And digital marketing really entails anything online. So it's things from Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, social media content, business awareness via Google or the internet in general, blogging, podcasting, anything like that. It all kind of goes into digital marketing. And so what I specifically do is I help small businesses to be able to gain massive awareness and generate leads and even traffic through the door if they have a brick and mortar, without having to spend more time marketing. So we kind of take some of that stress out of their hands and educate them on how to actually use the world of the internet to create influence and income.
Now, the internet is doing extremely well in that direction now. At the beginning of COVID, it was still something that people were afraid of trying. What are you finding now that you have started this and how it's going?
Yeah, well, before COVID, most businesses thought that using the internet, especially social media, for their business, I mean, there was quite a few people being very successful, but it definitely is in its like infancy. Most small business owners didn't think that they really needed to utilize it. They didn't think that they needed to even collect emails or build a business with a customer base. They just kind of took the status quo for granted. But then when COVID happened, the only way for us to reach, as a business, to reach our customers was through social media or through our email list and through the online presence, because otherwise calling people one by one was just going to be too time intensive. So it's been switching from Facebook being really the top dog as far as like marketing, over to the world of short form video, which is TikTok videos and Instagram.
Do you find that this new wave of using the internet will help people find more success quicker?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword. Honestly, I think that social media, especially these short form videos, are really, really bad for your brain and bad for people's ability to focus. They're really distracting and they're very highly addictive. Like studies have shown how crazy addictive it is. But with that being said, as a creator or a business creating content for social media and using the internet, you can definitely speed up your success because you don't necessarily even have to be a big business. You don't have to have any sort of status or clout or a big name. You can literally come in and overnight be well known just by being yourself. So that's the power of the internet as well.
And isn't it true that doing this type of work, you need to be quite transparent? So you could really can know very quickly whether you can trust someone or not trust someone.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing about the internet is like you can't really hide too much because if you put something up there, it's sorry, my lots of work. Always all these messages. Yeah, so you can't hide anything because once it's up there, it's up there. And information can spread so crazy quick on the internet that if you wrong somebody, it's easy to make it known that something was done wrong. And so the transparency and the speed in which information can be shared is very different than before. You know, like I said before, you could hide things and you had to be somebody in order to even get a radio spot or to even get aired on the TV. Like you had to have money and you had to be a big enough business to be able to afford that.
Okay, before the show, we were talking about success and failures. And my belief is that failures are only steps to success. Thomas Edison said that it took him thousands of tries to get the light bulb, but he stuck with it and we have the light bulb now. Can you talk a little about what your journey and where your journey has taken you?
Yeah, so I really love the conversation of success and failure because it was 2018. I was invited to speak to a freshman class of students about entrepreneurship. And at the end of me talking about a little bit about what I did, the students were allowed to ask questions. And all of the questions that the students were asking me were all fear-based questions around what happens if you fail. It was always like, how much money have you lost? What's the worst thing that could happen? Like, what's a crazy story? Like, everything was like, people wanted to know what could go wrong. And there's this psychology, this theory that's called the negativity bias. And this is where our brains are naturally wired to look for what's wrong. And so naturally, based on biology, we're wired to always be focusing on what's wrong. So when we get into entrepreneurship or having a business or making a difficult decision, we're constantly going to be thinking about what could go wrong and what's the worst thing that could happen. And so that leads a lot of the majority of people to not do anything ever, just to sit and play it safe. I've always been one of those people that early on, I was raised on a horse ranch. So I showed horses, I trained horses, and I was always out there taking risks, like with my own health and safety. I got on young horses and, started really baby horses and, got them to where someone could ride them and all that kind of stuff. And so I learned all about taking risks and what the consequences of failure were. And if you can survive a little tiny failure, you realize that you're okay. So the remedy to fear is to actually push forward and do the things that scare you, and then to start failing at things, because each time the failure could get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they'll be different. And then you realize that you survived that one and you can keep pushing forward. So I would get bucked off and then you get back on and then you work through the problem and then you move forward and then maybe you fall off again and you work through it and you get better. And you realize each time you fall off, oh, I'm okay. Everything, like, things didn't go wrong. So that's where it started. But as I got older, I took on more and more risks. I invested in different businesses, real estate. I had, up until COVID, I had a sawmilling business where we basically turned big timber trees like not like this, but big ones, into like wood that you could build houses with and barns. And then I had a brick and mortar vintage consignment store. But during COVID and a bad relationship, I ended up losing all of that. And it took me a couple of years to bounce back, but it taught me a really valuable lesson because that was the ultimate failure that could happen, basically spending a decade building things and then having to walk away from it. And I was able to step into a new version of myself and, align to a higher purpose and go after a new adventure. And looking back at it, it's kind of like what had happened if the failure didn't happen. I wouldn't have grown in the ways I'd grown. I wouldn't have had the experiences that I would have experienced. I wouldn't have met the people that I met. I wouldn't have impacted the lives that I have through my new business in the ways that I have. So it really was the best thing that could ever happen. And I realized moving forward that I could do so many more things because I survived that failure. And like Carla was saying, it's all feedback. Every time something bad happened, now I know how to organize my finances better. Now I know how to, what kind of relationships I want to keep in my life. Now I know that I can speak a little Spanish because I've been traveling around Mexico. And there's an example that I read from a book called Cybernetics. It's written back in the 70s. And the example about failure is it's kind of like reaching out in the dark for a flashlight. And when you reach out in the dark, your hand goes down and maybe you're to the left of the flashlight. Then you go to the right, then you go back to the left. And without being able to physically actually see, your hand can find its way into the middle to grab the flashlight just from the feedback of going left and right. And that's basically what happens when we move forward towards success, is that we're just kind of searching in the dark for what's going to work for us. And we eventually find it if we just keep going. But imagine if you're reaching for the flashlight and after the second time not grabbing it, you go, oh, it's not even there. And you walk off into the dark. All you had to do is take one more attempt and you would have been able to grab it.
Many people think, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not doing it, so I'm not worth anything. And yet it's what they love, and they stop doing it and they start doing other things that may not bring them the same joy. What words would you like to give to these people so they continue on their journey of what they really want to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you're in a place where you're not currently doing what you want to do, you're probably experiencing a lot of inner turmoil and suffering, because no matter what you believe in, whether it's God or the universe or something else, we were made to be the way we are. And that little bit of light inside of us, that little bit of purpose and excitement that we have, that comes from something bigger than ourselves. And so that's why you experience suffering when you're not going after it. So if you're in a place where you're just, first ask yourself, why am I not doing the thing? Is it money? Is it time? And is it because someone said you shouldn't do it? Really ask yourself why you're not doing and address that, because sometimes it takes getting radically honest and being like, oh, I'm saying I don't have time, but I spend an hour or two a day watching TV or scrolling social media. Oh, I don't have money, but I really went and bought a $5 Starbucks, or I went out to an expensive dinner. Really get honest, because a lot of times if you're not doing the thing you want to do, it's just because you're not making it a priority. And so really get honest with yourself first. Why is it that you're not doing it? And then when you decide, okay, I'm going to go for it, I've overcome all the reasons why I'm not doing it, try to find a little tiny baby step that you could take every single day to take action towards it. So when I was starting my digital marketing agency, there's a lot of huge agencies out there that are publishing content on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and LinkedIn and YouTube and Pinterest. They're like everywhere. And then they have all these different offers and websites, and they're doing talk shows and all these things. And if you sit there and you're like, if I would have been like, oh, I got to do all those things or nothing, because that's what being worthy is. If you're going out and doing everything, then I wouldn't have done anything. But instead I picked one thing and I said, okay, I'm going to start this podcast and I'm going to start growing it. And then I just started focusing on that, and I started one offer, and it's just like day at a time. What is one thing you can do to create momentum? And there's this thing called the compounding effect, and things start to compound the further you get along. And, I would tell myself as I went along, okay, well, what is something I want to achieve that in 6 months from now, I'll look back at this day and I'll be like, wow, I'm sure glad I did that on that day, because time goes fast. And the thing is time's going to keep going. And when you get to the end of your life and you're looking back at it, the biggest regret that people have, and they did a study on this, is not doing the things that they wanted to do sooner. Because you're not going to remember on your deathbed, oh my God, I was so scared. No, you're just going to be like, oh, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do it? And so time's going to keep going. You might as well just do the thing.
What do you think keeps people from doing what they want to do?
100% fear. And so every single person has a different base of where the fear comes from. So there's a book Tony Robbins wrote. It's called Unleash the Giant Within. And in it, there's an exercise. And in this exercise, he says there's a list of words. It's like negative emotion words, like judgment, be like uncomfort, like discomfort, God, what are the words? Fear. I'm drawing a blank right now. But anyway, just go through all the negative, anger, frustration, those things. So there's a whole list of them. And he says to go through and pick the top 5 that resonate with you. And for me, it was like the fear of judgment. I think the fear of failure is one of them too. Oh, the fear of humiliation. That's a hard word for me to say, and I speak English. That's a big fear. So I had these ones that were my top fears, and they said, okay, am I not doing these things because I'm afraid of being judged by others? Well, yeah, if I post this video, people might laugh at me, or they might tell me I'm stupid, or they might think I'm whatever. And so when you know which fears are your main ones and why they're holding you back, you can then break through and you can choose, oh, I'm just not doing this because of the fear that I have, the fear that I identify with. And then when you recognize these things, that's the first step to be able to go forward.
And going forward, it's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Getting someone over the fear sometimes can be very difficult.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. And think about what is the opposite of fear. It's confidence, right? Fear, confidence. The only way to build confidence is through action. Like, right? How else do you become confident in doing anything? In driving a car, in riding a bicycle, in learning how to write poetry or play tennis. The only way you can become confident in those things is through doing the things. There's no other way. So the only way to go from fear to confidence is doing something. And the speed at which you go from being fearful to confident, that bridge is just how many times you do the thing again and again and again. That's it.
And that's so true. And I know for myself, I've been dealing with all kinds of fears.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just quickly telling you, when Rehan first said, go and talk to people in English, I thought he was absolutely off his rocker. And I had no idea. And he said, well, you speak English, don't you? And I said, yeah, but I don't speak your language. And he said, does it matter? All you need to do is show up and let them talk. And even now, over 5 years later, I still face the fear every time I go live, whether it be an interview or a show.
Yeah.
But the point is getting over that fear and going forward. How would you, obviously I have done it, but how would you recommend people beginning at the first step of their journey to get over the fear?
Yeah. So again, the first thing would be recognizing where the fear comes from and why you have it. A lot of it can come from childhood. It can come from the influences around us. It can come from even movies and Hollywood. That's the first thing, is to know your fear. Like, really stare it in the face and be like, I am afraid because this one time in middle school, I tried to do a public speaking thing and I choked and started coughing and someone laughed. And now I'm terrified for the rest of my life. So if you can really recognize like where the fear came from, you can stare it in the face. The second thing is to break down whatever it is that you want to do into small enough baby steps that you take the first step. So if you're wanting to start a business, the first step would be, oh, I'm going to go onto the state website and I'm going to file the $100 for my business license. That's the first step. Second step, I'm going to go open a bank account. Cool. Second step. Third step, start a Facebook page or group. Okay, cool. Like, just tiny little baby steps. And don't overwhelm yourself. Don't write down a whole list and be like, I got to do this all the day. Otherwise, you'll never do it. Just take one step at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time.
And one step means one step. If you have the thought and you just go and write it down, that's, you've done something that you didn't do before.
Yeah.
And by the time you write one thing, you think, oh, yeah, so I need to do step 2 and then step 3 and step 4. And all that is true, but you can only do it in steps.
And it becomes addictive. Like, also let yourself celebrate each time you do one of those steps. Like, do a little happy dance, get yourself a glass of wine, go out to dinner, like whatever, celebrate that you did it, and it will naturally start feeling good for you to do those steps, and you'll want to do them more.
And the more you do them, where does it take you, Keely?
Further forward towards what you want.
I mean, I wouldn't have known when I first started that I would have wanted to talk to people in English.
Yeah, that's true too. You never really know where it's going to go. So if you're like, there's also this fear of like, oh, what if I do it and I decide I don't like it? Awesome. You wouldn't have known that you didn't like it unless you tried it. And then it's not just about doing the first thing. Like, I'm on to like my 10th business opportunity. I started out with selling horses and saddles, and then I sold stuff on eBay, and then I made, crafts, and then I sold this product, and then I started a sawmilling business. And like, each one of these things led to the next thing. And you develop more skills and you connect with more people and you get more confident. And so you can keep going up the levels through the different things that you're trying.
Right. It doesn't stop at taking that first step of writing down, I want to do X. X.
Yeah.
The next step may come 2 weeks later. As long as you keep on doing it.
Exactly.
You were talking earlier, not online, but we were talking about the failures that you went through to get you to where you are now. Yeah. I don't want you to tell all the failures, but I want people to know that you are successful now, but you went through difficult times, which many people do.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy when I always thought that everybody went through difficult times. And then I have a counselor that everybody should have a counselor or a coach or something. And if your coach or counselor doesn't have a coach or counselor themselves, then they're not working on themselves. So I've been working with a counselor for the last 5 years, and he told me recently, he's like, yeah, I have clients that are like 40, 50 years old, and they never had a bad day in their life. Like their life just always went perfectly well. And now they're dealing with some sort of crisis later in life, and they don't have any skills to deal with crisis. And so that blew my mind, because my whole life I've always taken risks. I've always tried things. And I think that my biggest failure, which can be looked at several different ways, is that back in 2020, I was facing a bankruptcy because I had invested in this real estate. I had started this business, and then I had left my ex with all of the equipment and assets and loans for the past sawmilling business. Well, when COVID happened, he decided that he was just going to sell off all the equipment and didn't make the payments. So the companies came after me for the balances on the loans. And this put me in a tough spot because my current business being shut down because of COVID couldn't pay those loans. And so I'd been forced to talk to a lawyer about filing bankruptcy. And I had decided to sell off all the assets. And so this was my worst case scenario, because this was 10 years of work that I had done, just dedicating my heart and soul into this thing. And it felt like it was being ripped away from me. But from that, I was able to either let it destroy me, like go get a job, cry myself to sleep every night, which I did spend a few nights crying. But I woke up and I was like, okay, what can I do next? What is the next opportunity that I could move into? And when you have a failure, you can either let it consume you and you could do nothing and just give up on life and stop, or you could use it as an empowering moment and be like, cool, I don't have any choice over this. There's nothing I can do about it now, but what can I do moving forward? What are my opportunities and options moving forward? And that's what I decided to do. I was like, how can I make this into the most epic comeback story ever? And that's what I did. I basically was like, I'm going to just sell everything. I'm going to travel to Mexico. I'm going to start a new business, and it's going to feel better aligned with what I want to do now. And 2 years later, it's just been a crazy adventure.
And what do you want to do now? I don't know if you want to announce it or not.
Yeah, well, moving forward, I actually came this last couple weeks. I've come into an opportunity with a local business here, and today we signed the incorporation letter to incorporate Rebel Funnels from a sole proprietorship to a partnership. So her and I are going to be partnering in on building out the agency even bigger than I have it now, because I was planning on dissolving it and just like moving on to a life coaching business, but she came in and was like, no, you've built something really substantial here. Like, let's partner on it and keep it going and just take the workload off of you. And so we're doing that. And then I'm going to be starting a side project where I'm going to help ambitious women to be able to feel empowered in relationships and be able to trust themselves to make decisions in relationships. So that's going to be my side project that I'm moving into.
And are you excited?
I'm really excited about it. I'm a little bit overwhelmed because I have so much work and so much business building that I have to do right now, but it's just a stage. The last few months I've been kind of sitting trying to decide what to do, and now this is the forward swing of the momentum, and it's time to move forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
I know, it's pretty crazy how this is why it's good to just be looking and watching for opportunities as well, because you really never know where one is going to kind of like fall into your lap.
Yeah, when we were talking the other night, I had the feeling, where am I going? Will this English thing ever take off? And you said, and you were all excited about it, and you said, yeah, it'll take off. And the exciting thing that I had today was when I saw the group, which is already pretty big, but people are writing and saying, yeah, I want to know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. We want to interact with you. And I'm excited to see that. Never thought it would happen.
Yeah, no, basically everybody coming into your group is excited to know about you and what you have to offer and get your help. And that's the cool thing about entrepreneurship, is that we all have something we can offer. And I believe that like anybody can be an entrepreneur.
And anyone can do the work.
Yeah.
It's not limited to anyone. I think people forget that we are all flowers in a garden. And there's roses and daisies and tulips and you name it.
Yeah.
But in that garden, there are no two people exactly alike. Everyone changes and everyone is changing. So how can we help people in the audience know that this is normal to be a little afraid of a new job or a new start to anything?
How do we let them know that it's normal? Well, fear is probably the most normal instinct that humans have, and it's placed there to keep us safe. So as human beings, we're wired to seek certainty as well as uncertainty. So we like to have safety, but we also like to have this feeling of aliveness. And so that's why it's really normal to be, like excited, but also nervous about doing something new. And the best way to overcome that fear and really lean into it is to read stories from other people that have gone through rough times and were nervous, and they see that the success is possible. Because when you see that it's possible, you can start believing it, and when you believe it's possible for yourself, then you actually make it happen.
And I see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone through a period, this will never be anything. Anyone can speak English. But the truth is, people don't believe that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they remain out in the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
How do we encourage these new people to come out of their sidelines or hiding places and move forward?
I think how we as entrepreneurs and leaders can do it is just by setting the example. So I always think about, who is it that needs me the most and who needs me to show up as my best version of myself, because we'll do more for others than we'll do for ourselves. So when I'm feeling like unmotivated, I'm like, I don't want to do that, I don't want to get out of bed, I then think, okay, well, who is it that needs me? My mom needs me. My clients need me. I don't currently have kids. So every time I think about having kids, it's like, well, I want to show up and be an inspiration for my kids, for my partner, for my friends. I want to be inspirational for other people. And in that, it's inspirational. And so that's what we can do, is we can show up as the best versions of ourselves, and we can push through the fear to show others that everything will be okay.
And even if you are not feeling your best, do it anyway.
Do something.
A shorter version. And by doing shorter versions, you begin to be able to be doing more. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah. So when I'm not feeling my best, like say, for example, going to the gym, if I'm not feeling my best, I will still go to the gym. Granted, I'm not sick. I'm just like not feeling super strong or motivated or whatever. I'll still go and I'll do something, and I'll allow myself to celebrate the fact that I went and did something. And so it's the same thing with anything you're doing in life, whether it be trying to pick up a healthier habit, have better communication skills, make more money. If you're like, I really just don't want to, just pick something and do something. Keep the motivation and the momentum going.
Because when you keep that going, guess what? You become like Edison. You may have tried it 10,000 times, but that one last time, it clicks.
Mm-hmm. And there's a saying, an object in motion stays in motion. It's so true, because if you just stop and you give up, it's going to be so much harder to get going again, versus maybe you slow down a little bit, but you haven't stopped.
Right. And not stopping is what's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not thinking that, hey, you're the world's greatest gift. You may be, but at the same time, realize that you need to keep going.
Mm-hmm. But personally, I also think that popular culture, like via movies and stuff, the tales of the humble underdog, I think that especially for women, this idea of needing to be humble really holds people back from being successful and showing up the way they need to show up, because there's a little bit of a need for us to be arrogant and to be prideful in order to be a leader.
Well, I think people are afraid to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
People came to me and say, oh, Carla, you are now a thought leader. When you're talking about smiling and laughing and speaking in English. And even now, the first few times I heard that, I'm like, are you crazy?
I know, it's kind of like, who am I to be a leader? Who am I to tell people what to think? But again, that's part of just going forward and being inspirational just by being yourself and putting yourself out there.
And realizing you, no matter what you're doing, you are a gift to someone, and making someone else feel good about you, her or himself.
Yeah.
Keely, I want to thank you for your time. We have gone over, and I don't know what your schedule looks like, but it has been a real joy to talk to you. What would you like our audience to go away thinking?
I think that if you take nothing else from our conversation today, it would be to go out and chase your vision for your life with wild abandonment. Just go out and do it, or wild abandon, I think it's saying. And just go out there and do it, because even in the worst failures, what society or someone might perceive to be a failure is, it's just, that failure is just the beginning of another epic adventure, another level to whatever success you're seeking.
So never give up.
Yeah, never, don't let it, because I mean, it always is funny when people are like, oh, I just gave up. It's like, well, then what are you doing now? We're always going to be doing something. So it's either you're doing what you want to do or not what you want to do. So why don't you just do what you want to do?
Right. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Exactly.
Keely, thank you so much for your time and energy tonight. It really has been a joy to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
You are more than welcome. And I look forward to getting to know you better. I hope some people connect with you. I'm not sure what your next journey is, but I'm excited to see you grow into it.
Oh, thanks.
And with that, let me remind everyone that this show was sponsored, or is sponsored, by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace, one conversation at a time. Can we wave goodbye? Bye, everyone.
Bye.